You're not an octopus, and it's kind of annoying. And so you should delegate accordingly, and you should grow internally. Because besides an IT specialist, if you try to bring in an outside supervisor, they will never, ever get the respect of the core crew. They haven't earned their stripes. And I don't play like that. I go old school style because it's not me.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. We have Richard Blank here with us all the way from beautiful, beautiful Costa Rica. My friend, how does it feel to be living in paradise?
Well, if you can get past your parents' guilt, Steve, you can live anywhere in the world. Pura vida from beautiful Central America paradise.
Oh, man, that is a thing. So now, originally, when you look at, you set up a business and you run a business called Costa Rica's Call Center. Obviously, you couldn't locate it anywhere because it's in the name anywhere else. So you had to be in Costa Rica. Originally, were you from Costa Rica, or where'd you come from?
Well, this is definitely a Northeast Philadelphia accent. So I was born and raised a Flyers fan and an Eagles fan. And when I graduated proud Abington High School back in '91, I doubled down on my favorite class, which was Spanish. And so I left the cold weather where they had snow days with KYW News Radio. And I moved to Arizona and went to school in Tucson. I was a wildcat. Went to U of A for 5 years. I did the super senior plan. Spent my junior year abroad in Spain and learned the language. And next thing you know, post-grad, I had an opportunity when I was 27 years old to move to Costa Rica for a couple months, work in my friend's center.
That's
and
amazing.
My friend, I took it. And so here we are 24 years later, happily married, have a business, and living one of the best lives.
Now, I remember there was one thing that you said in our pre-interview that I found very interesting, was you talked about this wasn't maybe the direction that your parents would have chosen back in the day. They had a sort of a different lens of what your future might look like. And then he said, no, I'm going to cut my own path. And how did that kind of, I know we're looking a little bit far into the past here, but how did that work? How did that go?
Well, it's quite simple. My argument to my parents were my great-grandparents that came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century from Eastern Europe. They moved to New York, were in the garment industry, learned English, and made their money during the Depression. So we're nomads. It's in our blood, and you can't hold back somebody that has a spark for a second language and shows such dedicated practice above and beyond what school expects of you. And it's not a cute parlor trick while you pat me on the head and say I'm cute to you and your friends. No. This was a vision quest. This was something that was inside of me where it didn't feel like work. It's not a forced march. And so when you're 18, how do you make that sort of decision unless you have doctors or attorneys in your family, a family business, or really that sort of scholastic and career culture direction? For me, it was just, parents that expected me to go into the family real estate business or maybe go to Harvard Law like grandpa. Columbia business like my dad, and my older brother went to Washington and Lee University. Now, Steve, I don't know about you, but I didn't have the grades for that back in the day.
You were learning how to network back then, is what we'll say.
I was learning who Richard was because this was the long play. This was a lot of decades of time where you don't want to forget your keys at home and have to walk back 7 blocks. That sucks. And so a lot of it was being a dreamer. And it's not saying naysayers are great believers, but who am I comparing notes to? But fortunately for me, my dedicated Spanish teacher wrote me a recommendation letter for college, and my principal, the late principal, got me into college. My grades were terrible. But they saw that I was an artist of speech and give the kid a chance. Maybe he'll get his act together, which I kind of did.
Well, talking a little bit about the next element is that you've built your business, your call center. How many people work for the call center right now?
We're at 150 strong.
So I think you've done a fair bit of building and pioneering in that success that you've gotten to. So congratulations on the work that you've done.
Well, thank you, my brother. I think a lot of it has to do, let's think of me as a trunk of a tree. I'm not on home court advantage, so I needed roots for some serious stability. Besides my wife, which is the director of human resources, I needed an attorney. I needed some accountants. And how about this one, my man? What about the IT director? I didn't have the cognitive skills to go to school and get those Cisco certificates. I pay the big dollars for those people to be available when I need them. Yeah, but they're not making phone calls like the guys on the floor. No, they're specialists. And when you need them the most, they're there for you. And I understand the value of the IT department and sometimes their leisure time. Trust me, it offsets the times when they need to take deep breaths and save your company when a server goes down or something. So
just had that this morning, so it was resolved. Yeah.
And what do you do to that guy? Do you twist knives and kick them when they're down? Is it deliberate? Was it by accident? I don't know. But when you're handing the keys to the heart of a company, you really need to have faith and trust in somebody now. Running a business, I've been disappointed from time to time. We've had individuals that took advantage of my company or were just definitely not in the right bus, right seat. So it was a terrible fit. But what are you going to do? I mean, some people fill out resumes with bells and whistles, or maybe during chaos, you have an individual that steps up to the plate that wants to do something, and you see if they're the right person for it. And so the worst thing a boss can do, Steve, is just to wear all hats. It's impossible. You're not an octopus, and it's kind of annoying. And so you should delegate accordingly, and you should grow internally, because besides an IT specialist, if you try to bring in an outside supervisor, they will never, ever get the respect of the core crew. They haven't earned their stripes. And I don't play like that. I go old school style, because it's not me. It's really the agents are the ones that create that sort of culture on the floor and that sort of synergy. I'm just the boss, but I hope that makes sort of sense.
I think, well, it does. You dropped a lot of nuggets, and I kind of want to start to pick up a couple of them.
Nuggets, what do you got?
Yeah. The first one that you talked about was the heart of the business, and I want to talk a little bit about call centers just as a whole, because my belief, a lot of times I think your people, number one, is the heart of the business, and then second to that heart would be your clients, and then underpinning all of that is the technology. And when we look at systems and processes, I'll throw technology into that hopper. But when you look at clients and the idea of giving trust, that's probably a big thing that you run into. I would imagine having the call center saying, "Hey, we're going to get you to connect with our most important thing, which is our clients, and we're giving you sort of the keys to the vehicle." How do you overcome that? Like, how do you get people on board with the idea that you're integrating into their ecosystem?
Well, there's a lot of checks and balances, and I will ask certain questions prior to see if we're going to integrate or we're going to use our system. I don't like surprises, and I don't like people over-exaggerating, because I don't need a lack of preparation to be my emergency. I hate things like that. But for the most part, people really have a plug and play, or maybe my predictive dialer, my labor pool, ability to do script writing rebuttals or comparisons to other mediums and metrics allows me to start strong, cut fat, and really give some great consulting advice in the beginning, because check it out. I will lose the majority of my potential clients on price. When you go offshore, not near shore, I compete against India, the Philippines, and the Far East, and those prices could be half the amount. And they're incredibly talented bilingual agents there. People might have reservations in regards to certain cultures or accents, but that's for another time, a different conversation. But in my call center Olympics, if somebody has the skills to take copious notes, to review information, use military alphabet, positive escalation, proper diplomatic vocabulary, then by all means, they should earn the account, even if they're half my price. Good for them. But if I can offset that half cost by soft skills, not by doing the double work, that's inbound support. I can't double the work. But if I'm prospecting, selling, appointment setting, lead generation, or closing, if that soft skill can go 1.5 or 2 more than that guy, I can match it or do it. So when it comes to merit, I can gain the account. And then also, you got to look at attrition rate, employee morale. What about retention, upsells, Referrals. Do you think that might have a cost? I don't know, $3 an hour, Billy. I don't know what to tell you. But no one's going to take your $3 an hour and stop insulting me that 50 people are going to do it. You're not even coming to me with a script ready. Your list is only 700 numbers. Bro, I can burn through that in 2 days. And that's with wiffle balls. So if you're going to make this play big, let's put everything on the table. And I don't mind having that black and white conversation with you. I'm not going to make you cry. But I need to call the balls and the strikes because I don't want you upset or start burning through agents because you're frustrated.
Yeah. I think the idea there is what you're hitting on really hard is the idea that, I mean, when most people look at call centers, they look at cost first, which I think I agree with you. I think it's the wrong model. I think when we look at cost centers, it's why am I doing this first? And then why am I doing this? Well, is it a cost model in the sense that I'm just taking somebody's job and just putting it offshore? Or is it that I'm getting them to do a task that's going to produce a return? And if the task is producing a return, well, if I go to this source and they don't have the scripts that you do, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but if they go to this source and they don't have those scripts and it produces, say, a return of, I don't know, say 30%, and then yours is a return of 120%, well, that's a pretty easy decision. Because when you spend money, you got to look at, I love Kevin O'Leary, where he says, my money is like little soldiers. I'm going to send them out into the field, and they need to come back with more friends. And so, the same thing applies as if you're bringing on a call center, you're going to say, well, how much am I getting back in return? Because at the end of the day, if I'm not getting a return back, there's no reason for doing it and spending on it. It's the same thing with a marketing objective. Same thing with, marketing we'll talk, that's a little bit different, but you can say there's brand value and all this other jazz. But generally speaking, if you put $1 out, you need to get some magnitude back in return. And I think that goes down to the idea of when you were talking about some of the training that you do and how important training is in your organization.
It's essential. And just real quick, in regards to your last point, it really depends. Is it a pilot project? Has it been doing it for years? We have years worth of metrics of full-time agents making the call. So I have a QA department to look at that sort of stuff. Or is it where you're just looking for, as you're saying, cost, because somebody in Chicago could be $25 to $50 an hour if they get full benefits on-site or work from home, where my thing's a fraction of that cost with a second language capacity. So as I say, my good friend, let's all calm down. If somebody has the merit and somebody is smart enough to see that they are able to bring in the best value, they should get the business. You just take over overhead, contractual obligations, what you pay. But I can't plug and play an immediate return for you. Things haven't been tested yet. And I don't mind if you don't have a script. We can create it from scratch. And maybe your script that you have has terrible wording in it that evokes ego defense. Take the word out, help. Stop using that and stop calling me sir. Use guide, assist, and lend a hand, and use certain names for trigger words for anchoring. These are certain soft skills. So these are the things I should be paying you to do. And if somebody wants to really understand the art of speech, which you do, and your brother too, then it's a beautiful thing because it's a dance. You're not just carpet bombing, Steve. That's pathetic. You're taking it one step at a time, one friend at a time, one podcast at a time, one client at a time.
That's right.
And that's all I want people to do is not have target paralysis. They need to be focusing on where they're at in the now so they can use that Robin Williams magic dust and be spontaneous. So they can talk about their dog, music, or where they live. Those are the sort of things that get you accounts.
Love it. Love it. Now, when we talk about the training that you do, you had a couple different models when you're talking about speech and the way that people communicate. And I love the idea when you talk about taking out the word help. I think that is just so thoughtful when you're looking at the way you can construct a sentence. So that does not go unmissed. But when you look at the methods and the methodologies, I kind of want to explore those a little bit more. So talk to me a little bit about some of the methods.
Steve, my man, you're just talking about readjustments of tone. That's all. Instead of saying, excuse me, no, my man, you fall on that sword. For my clarification, Steve, was it ABC or 1, 2, 3? Because your dog is barking, because your music is loud, because your cell phone sucks. For my clarification, it's the kind of thing I don't want you to feel bad.
I love it.
Take out help. Hey, Steve, how may I assist you? How may I lend a hand? Hey, you're halfway there. Let's guide you to the end. I love that sort of stuff. It's really nice, beautiful, strategic vocabulary that gives you a 45-degree javelin throw, not like a start-stop, which you could have a false start. Those things are terrible. In every composition, you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. People are always worried about that 10-minute phone call. I believe in 30-second segments, like a breath, like a bite, like a sip. And processing information, that's a 30-second attention span. So stop telling me about a 10-minute phone call, Steve. It's 20, 30-second calls. You get checkpoints, first downs, for touchdowns. That's how it rolls. So what do we do in the beginning of a call? Asked Steve. And I said, well, money, mindset, mentoring podcast. This is what we do. You do a company name spike when someone picks up the phone. Ring, ring, hello. Money, mindset, mentoring podcast. I sound like a mystery shopper, someone that knows Steve and Michael. And I tell you what, this is what happens. Action to reaction. I have 3 seconds. I'm not going to ask to speak to Steve or your brother or anything else. I'm going to say something that you know, and I'm going to say it better than you. It gets the gatekeeper out of the trance. And instead of saying, when you say, hey, is Steve there? Or, this is Richard, Costa Rica's Costa. Oh, we're good, thanks. Or no, thank you. Or he's busy. Or who's this? No. When I do money, mindset, mentoring, podcast, I'll usually get, who's this? And that's when you get the buffer boomerang technique. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. And for the listeners, walk me through what that means.
A buffer boomerang technique, it's a readjustment of the tone. The best example is I say the company name Spike, and Steve goes, who's this? Compared to who's this? I hear the who's this or who is this? And I would say, Steve, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. You name drop you to buffer it. I'll let you know it's an excellent question. Glad you brought it up. I'll repeat the question to show active listening because I hate repeats. Yeah, my name is Richard Blank, so I'll send it to you positive. But I won't say the name of my company yet. Why, Stevie boy? Because you can ask me a follow-up question. Well then, who is Richard Blank? Well, how do you like that defense out of 2? Doesn't sound like a 10 anymore now, does it? So I would say, yo, Steve, I knew you were going to ask my company's name. It's Costa Rica's call center. And then you play your odds. But that's at least a beautiful 30-second romantic death if they happen to hang up on you. But how about if Steve says, okay, Richard, I'll let you speak to my brother, Michael, right? And I go, okay, Steve, before you transfer me to your little brother, I just want to let you know that you were really helpful and you were great. I'm going to let him know that. I'm also going to do it in writing at the end of that call for the meeting minutes. So if I happen to call the Money Mindset Mentoring back and you pick up the phone, you're going to remember me, you're going to thank me, and there's the Richard Circle. So then I get transferred to Michael, and Michael's like, hi, this is Michael, little brother, right? I go, I just got to let you know that Steve's the greatest. You don't even know who I am. And I'm not even saying Money Mindset Mentoring yet. I did a name spike compared to the company name spike because Steve gave me the pass to pitch to talk to Michael. We haven't even done anything yet in sales. So Michael then goes, who's this? We're back to the buffer boomerang again.
Yeah.
And so what happens there? I've anchored. I've separated myself from others. I haven't got the immediate hang up, or at least that crappy telemarketer that's just throwing those little balls at the carnival hoping to win a stuffed animal. It's just not going to happen. It's a rigged game.
I was just saying the game was rigged. Yeah.
Come on, there are carnival barkers out there who are my favorite in the world. And so what are you going to do? What you need to do is, if you're going to make 400 phone calls a day, jump freaking clouds. Enjoy 30 seconds, because you got to split it in half with pauses and breaths in between. You don't get to say too much. I'm going to say your name. I'm going to buffer you down twice. My name, my company's name, and hopefully by that time you go from a 10 to a 2, and that 8 moves from the vertical into the horizontal, and that's just mass movement. It's just mass movement. And all I did is reduce defense and put it into momentum offense. And I did it ethically. I didn't lie.
No.
And then I'm going to say, yo, Steve, when I call you back 2 weeks later after Michael does the call back and you remember Richard. Hey, Steve, out of the thousands of people that call your company, how many people actually complimented you to your brother? And you probably say none. I go, well, that's the kind of relationship we have prior to a contract, the sort of relationship we have. So when Steve and Michael go at the end of the day to decide 5 call centers, some are cheaper, different contractual terms, maybe they say, you know what? I kind of like the way Richard talks because he didn't angle his way in. He didn't forget about me. He looked at the website. He did his due diligence. So when he left us a voicemail, right, it was very custom made. And when he did his email, my God, what he wrote about you, Steve, and how you answered the phone and how helpful you were. And that's what made my business. That's what grandma and grandpa taught me. You know, just
I love it.
Super old school, nice, and that's how it would win, because gentlemen like yourself kind of like to see what people are like if you shed skin and you become vulnerable.
Yep.
And it's worked for me, my friend. It's given me very long-term clients that like the fact that we started exceptionally strong.
I love it. I love it. And the thing is one of the things you really have demonstrated by what you're doing is, number one, I believe this to be true, is authentically be yourself. I think the playing cloak and dagger tricks, it might get you a short-term win, but it's not going to get you a long-term success. So the idea of just being authentic at the beginning, respecting the relationships in the business, I think is extremely important, because the person who, everybody calls them a gatekeeper. No, it's Lois. It's John. They are people, and treating them as such, I think, is extremely important, because they provide a lot of value, because they're the ones protecting the person who is making a lot of the decisions in the business, so they can focus on the big things. And so giving them a respect for the job that they're doing, I think, is extremely important. And then the last thing is looking at saying that you can take that and take that across a whole organization, train the organization, so that they can provide that value to your clients through that systems and models and training. I think that's marvelous. I love it.
Steve, so they enjoy it. It's not, people take certain jobs, like you see the Wolf of Wall Street and Boiler Room and stuff, and that's all right. You can sling stock, but it's like a singer that's got to sing it every night. Listen, the majority of the calls, qualification, conversion, and timing. I'm with you on that. But if you're going to walk into a castle, you do it with your chest out. You get the trumpets and you make your first initial presentation. The rest is bingo ball odds. I'll take it as it is. Mm-hmm. But damn it, you better land me the 30. I want that intro solid. Yep. Why? So you can jump those clouds. It's a romantic death. Por lo menos, at least. Company name spike, 2 buffer boomerangs, and a positive escalation. And you tell me why our calls aren't better quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
The rest is just whatever. I just want that solid intro for anchoring. Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the idea, if you have somebody who's actually following a model, and the model they've been trained in the organization that they're in, and that model is proving successful, people, no matter if they're in a call center, they're digging a ditch, they're a doctor or a lawyer, it doesn't matter. Intrinsically, humans like to be productive. And I think Grant Cardone, one of the people I follow quite a bit, what he said, he was interviewed a little while ago, and it was about his daughter. And he says, do you want your daughter to be happy? He says, no. He said, I want my daughter to be productive. And it's a very interesting spin. And I think that's something that I think we're starting to see people migrate back to, after all the shenanigans of the past few years of, different focuses. I think the focus on productivity, I think, is so imperative, because I think productivity brings joy. And for the person who's being productive. So if somebody's on the phone all day, every day, making phone calls, and it's not successful, and they're getting spat in the face, and proverbial speaking, and they're just not being respected, and they're not being treated well, and that's eventually going to wane on an individual. When you have somebody who's
why walk in the ring against Ali, Chuck Wepner? Then what industry are you in?
Well, the idea is that
you pay if you're a telemarketer. Seriously, what were they expecting?
Well, the thing is, they're expecting wins. And the thing, when you look at golf, the first swing you make is not going in that hole. Probably the 20th swing I make is not going to go in that hole, right? But the idea is that you're doing layups and layups and layups to eventually find a win. I mean, if they're on a phone call and they're not going to win at all, they probably shouldn't be making those phone calls.
That's all. Thank you, Steve, but you're all over the place. You didn't give me a specific industry. I don't know how long this cat's been doing this. Who trained them? What sort of onboarding? You're generalizing, making it seem like telemarketing is bad. And okay.
Oh, I'm not generalizing at all.
Scenario, but no, seriously, let's do the 0 conversion ratios every day. Okay, that's why, as I always said as a telemarketer, how can I use them? What am I going to get out of this crappy ass job that is paying me per hour and I can't get a single freaking commission because the list is bad or the product is bad, the price is bad, everything's bad. Well, as I said before, this is the romantic death that you have. I can't guarantee the 95 rest of the call. That's up to Billy, and his stuff. But at least that 5% with Steve and myself, prior than the introduction of that company, I'm an ace. What does that mean? I got to pass the pitch. What does that mean? It's a positive reinforcement that wherever I plug Richard or Steve, we are going to be successful. It just so happens that we are not in the right environment at the right time. It's a little bit, but we've overgrown that cage. And so 3 things should happen. If you're signing your name to something, you give it the best that you got. Secondly, is have a freaking plan B. Start looking into it. But see, if you're going to go down, don't cry and don't drop that sword. You go down like a champ.
Absolutely.
Why? So you have your dignity. But
It reminds me of a rugby game that I was in, and I was probably 25, and we were up against a team out of Cardiff, and the smallest person on that team was probably 6'2", 6'3", and probably 240, 250 pounds.
Tiny.
And I'm 5'8", and at that time I was probably 140 pounds. Wow. And, I wasn't a big player on the team, but we got trumped the first half of the game. I think we were down by like 80 points. But you got to get back out on the field, and you've got to show up again because there's another 40 minutes that you got to play. And because you committed to be there in the game. So I understand the idea of being committed, in the sense that you are there to do a job, and irrespective of the outcome, you are there to do a job. And my job was to finish that game. But the thing is when we got up to the end and now the game is over, now the team, everybody shakes hand and you go up into the pub or wherever else you're hanging out with, the respect you get from that other team because you didn't quit. Right. That is second to none. And so that right there, again, you were productive because you were there. You were productive because you gave them a game, albeit it wasn't their toughest one, but you gave them a game, and you were productive because you're going to show up to the next game. And that helps you build that resiliency, I think, that you need in any aspect of life. My thing is it's productive. It's not about chasing, am I happy in the moment? Believe me, when they're on top of me and you got 15 people chasing you down and you're running into this wall of just absolute muscle, it's not going to feel good. But the thing is, you're going to be productive because you've played that game.
Absolutely. It's like a flower in a desert. It's something that's unexpected. And what you did back in those days during athletics and during your 10 years of jiu-jitsu is that you make yourself seaworthy. The job that you had at 12 years old prepared you for the 18, for your mid-20s to running a company in your 30s. And so these are just stages, the tapas of life. And so if it's 1 day to 1 year or 1 month that you're working at that crappy job, you sling it, you do it.
Absolutely.
And so I like when people, you've seen bullies, or even you with your fighting, you've probably had an opponent that was, I can't say superior, but might have had an advantage or trained differently or was just at the right place at the right time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the best thing for me is when a peer sizes me up. And I learned that the best lesson is in college. It's kind of weird because when you get to college, there's certain kids that knew how to iron, knew how to cook. You think I'm crazy? Excuse me. Knew how to cook, separate the clothes and laundry. They were good with homework and note taking, and their apartment was clean. and they just seem to have their act a little bit more together than I did. And it sized me up. So if they could do it, I could do it. And so what I've found, compared to myself being the apex and leader, you choose the right person that should not be promoted to supervisor, because then they'll burn out. You keep them on the field with the people, because they're the ones that do the shadowing, the side-by-side, and their electromagnetic energy will spread. And so that's where you selectively put the ace. I've seen the worst promotions of people where you clip their wings, then they're coffee breath, pissed off people yelling at you to make more calls, when 2 months ago they were superstar and everyone loved them, and now everyone hates them.
The Peter principle.
So, right, brother? And so you got to find the people that can shine the most. And it's not about the money. It's fulfillment, because anyone can make money that has skills. But there are people that want to pay it forward, or they want to accomplish a personal goal prior to moving forward on something else. And you cannot stop that sort of trajectory with individuals. And if you're sharp about it, you see it, you encourage it, and you support it until that mission is done. And then collectively, because they have the option of leaving at any time,
absolutely,
you decide together how you're going to continue to grow together. It's not a boss employee anymore. No. I might have a different papel or a different position, but it's back to back and shoulder to shoulder and walking in step, sir. And that's just the way that I see things here. And it makes it very humbling to me. And so I don't reduce my position, but I'm the first person to sit and break bread with people, have coffee with them, know them by their names, and go outside and tell your mother how amazing Steve and Michael are. And so I'll be the first person to do something like that.
Beautiful. Well, tell my mom then.
From here, man. That's
actually, my mom knows. My mom is awesome. She is an amazing human being. Amazing human being. Well, you know what, Richard? It has absolutely been a joy chatting with you today. You are so full of knowledge, and I love what you're doing. And seeing the passion that you have for your team, seeing the passion you have to help build them and craft them and know them. I think that is such a huge thing, and it's been a true joy having you on the podcast.
Thanks. One last thing, when you come visit me in Costa Rica, we got to have a pinball marathon. I'm a collector of antique pinball machines.
Anybody who has a pinball machine who's looking to unload, Richard Blank is your man.
Oh, yeah, definitely from the 1970s. That's my decade.
Done. Richard, thank you very much, and thank you for being on the Money, the Mindset, and Mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next one.